Hi guys, my name's Andy. So I offered to do a video on the details of the treadle hammer. So a few guys thought that it was a DIY build. It's not. I bought this at auction a few weeks ago. I believe it was made by a company called Blacker. They're a company in the UK that have power hammers. And yeah, as I say, I offered to do a detailed video on the construction with some measurements and things like that, just in case anyone fancies replicating it and making their own. The design is fairly simple, so yeah, let's get cracking and I'll show you around. Okay guys, so it's a treadle hammer obviously, so that is the foot pedal, which goes back to the linkage here, which does the main operations. You'll notice the spring just here, that seems to take or soften out the treadle action, just to kind of reduce some of the shock in the system, I think. That is linked to the main crossbeam here, which in turn is obviously linked to the hammer support arm. This looks like a piece of channel iron which has just been kind of fiddled around at the end. I think that could be replicated fairly easily. The hammer is just connected by these two big grub screws. It's just friction. Okay, at the back of the hammer you've got these two springs here which soften the return stroke, just so that it doesn't tip backwards, I think. And then obviously the two main springs here. Okay guys, we'll start with the overall dimensions of the working portion here, or even the whole thing. So from the front of the pedal to the back is 62 inches, that's 158 centimeters. The width of the treadle, which is wider than the rest of the hammer, the treadle is 2 foot wide and is made of 1/2 inch flat bar. Of the actual machine itself, it is 12.5 inches wide at the edge of this, and then it's bolted on or welded to some angle iron at the bottom, which is, the angle iron base is 2 feet as well. Okay, the sides of the hammer are, I believe, 5mm plate or 1/4 inch plate, and then they've got this, effectively a piece of angle iron just wrapped around the whole thing. You could just use flat bar and just tack it on the corner, whatever. As I say, this is only 5mm plate, so not exactly hugely heavy duty. The base is 14.25 inches. At the top it tapers to 6 inches, and then you've got the radius at the top. The height overall is just over 34 inches. Looks like 6mm, but it's probably 5 would be fine. There's some angle iron at the base that is 2 foot long on both sides, and then there's 3 securing holes along its length. This is also just bolted through onto the main body, and then as you can see, this bit of angle iron that wraps it is all riveted on. Now, the hammer itself is held together by these 4 main bolts. You'll notice this one is different to the other two, because it's a square shank. I'll tell you more about that later. These 3, first set is the center of the first bolt, 6.5 inches up from the base of the machine, and they are, and the centers of each one are 7.5 inches apart. Up to the second one, so 10 inches center to center for the central bolt. These just go all the way through, and they are separated by a pipe spacer, just a 1-inch pipe and the bolt itself goes right the way through the middle. This bolt at the top is special. It's actually square, again with a piece of pipe spacer going through it. That is going through the two coiled springs, like snail shell coils. I don't know the proper name for them. I'll try and get a good shot of it. That stops them from twisting. Okay guys, this is the back of the machine. Again, edge to edge is only 12¼ inches. The angle iron wrapping is 1¼ inch, 30 mil. You'll notice this X bracing going across it, that juts out slightly so that it doesn't impact these springs. The springs are, I don't know if you can see, they've been heavily repaired in the past, but they are 20 inches in length, and then you've got the tensioning system at the back here. This X frame bit, or the X bracing, is 24¾ in length, and then you've got the bendy bits as well, just to get it away from the spring. Okay guys, this is the return spring that stops the arm from moving back too fast or too far. I actually had to replace one of these because it was broken, and I just used normal mild steel. There seemed to be enough spring in it as it was to do the job nicely, and it's doing a good job so far. This is the pipe spacer that separates the two. I'll get a measurement for that in a sec. There is a washer here and a spacer on the back side that you won't be able to see. I've greased all of that quite well. Now, as I say, I had to replace one of these. I used 1/4 by 1 inch flat bar, mild steel. It seems to be doing the job absolutely fine. Okay, just over 7¼ inches long. You'd have to kind of eyeball that as you build it. Okay guys, this is the original spring that I replaced. As you can see, it coils up. There is a square center which goes over the square bar in the machine. That just stops it from rotating around. As you can see, there is a crack just here that is just, separated the thing. It's also been repaired at some point in the past, brazed back together. So I completely replaced this with mild steel. As I say, it was just 1/4 by 1 inch flat bar. So the whole length is 13½ inches. The coil, if you like, is 3¾ inches edge to edge. I can't imagine that is particularly critical if you were to just replicate this with mild steel, and as long as you were near enough, there'd be enough spring in it to do the job. The square hole then is a really odd measurement. It is 22 mil, or it's like a 1/16 over 3/4 of an inch, whatever the hell that is in 1/16. So square hole, square peg, twisty, springy, awesome. Okay, let's crack on. Moving to the front of the machine, this lower bar here wraps right the way around and bolts. You can just see it there on either side of the machine. That's just a one bolt that goes right the way through the very base. You can see the nut there. That just goes all the way through. There's a washer on either side, obviously. The piece is effectively an odd hourglass shape. Right at the back, it just expands out to either side and then comes in here. That should be fairly easy to replicate. Size wise, front to back, the arm is 30½ inches long. It is again 1/2 inch thick by 1.75 inches, so quite a big heavy duty bar. 2 holes at the front here, they're not critical, you can put them wherever you want I'd imagine, but centre to centre, 5 3/8 of an inch. Now these two obviously link up to the whole linkage if you like. The first bolt is 6.5 inches back from the inner edge of this bar, and then from the centre of that to the centre of the second bolt is 9.5 inches. This piece is C-shaped. You won't be able to see it, but it actually has 3 holes here to make some adjustments on the hammer, on the treadle part of the hammer. This linkage bit, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sure there are technical terms out there for all this kind of stuff, guys. If I am making obvious mistakes, please feel free to correct me, because I just don't know what they're called. I'm sorry about that, but just the way it is. This piece is 3 3/4 inches long, and the bolts are 1.5 inches centre to centre. This main arm then has an eye forged at the bottom. It goes all the way up. This is all threaded through here to accept this suspension recoil spring bit. Whole length of that arm is 21 inches. Okay guys, so this C-shaped piece is 18.25 inches. This upright part here is 7 inches from the centre bolt to the centre of the bolt, so just a little bit more than that overall obviously. Holes at the front of it are just over 1 inch centre to centre. This cross piece is slightly different to the one on the back. It doesn't step out slightly, it's just completely flush with the body. That is 26.5 inches from the centre bolt to the bolt. That'll be on each side again. It is also worth noting that it has been forged in slightly, just almost like a very shallow L shape here. Okay guys, this is the main part of the linkage which connects the treadle to the rest of the hammer. It is 20 inches long overall. There is a cutout in the centre or on either side to allow 1/2 inch wide and 3.25 inches long. Okay guys, so this nut here has lugs on either side to slot into these cutouts here. Obviously you've got the springs there as well, just to soften the pull on the treadle to reduce some shock. To remove this, you have to disconnect the rod from the rest of the foot pedal and then unscrew that all and it will come out. These springs, I don't know why there was two in there when I got it. I feel like one long one would probably be better. Luckily I've got a spring manufacturer company literally just around the corner from here, so I think I'm going to replace that and put one long one in, I should say. The width is 33 mil or 1 inch. In fact, it's just over 1.25 inches wide, but it does flare slightly, but I can't imagine that's deliberate. The spring compressed is at the minute 4 inches, so you maybe want a slightly longer spring than that. It's quite a heavy one as well. This spring up here is too soft. The whole thing just compresses all the way when I'm using the hammer. The one that arrived with the hammer when I bought it was completely broken. There was about 3 or 4 breaks along the spring. So as I say, I would suggest putting one long one in, heavy gauge, nice and firm, quite a stiff spring. Okay, moving on to the actual working parts of the hammer. As I said, this is basically a piece of channel iron. There is a pivot point here, but for whatever reason doesn't seem to actually do anything, because the whole unit moves as you pull the treadle down. I'll show you that here. So as you can see, the whole unit moves. So this piece, this cross piece here, is all cast. That's all one solid piece. On the inside of here there is like a domed recess. It's not pipe, it's just like you could drill in to a piece of solid bar, and that's what you're left with in there. This is a pin that goes in either side. It doesn't go all the way through, it just goes in maybe about half an inch if that. Again, on both sides. I've greased these. You can screw this in and then lock it in place with this nut. Similar to tire hammers, they have that sort of thing going on as well. Anyway, so yeah, as I say, just a pin that goes through from either side, and that's the pivot point for the arm. I think this could be replicated fairly easily. I would just use, to be honest, I would probably just use pipe and then a piece of angle iron, or a piece of channel for the central part. I think that'd be plenty strong enough. You could use a big piece of flat bar as well if you wanted to, but and a pivot all the way through. Okay, so that's where your foot pedal links to. This center portion here allows the hammer to pivot from side to side. So there is like a gear cog mechanism at the back here which locks the hammer in place, and that bolt there seems to lock it all down as well. But if you loosen that, you can actually pivot the hammerhead separately to this, which is quite a nice idea, but in reality I'm not sure how much I'm actually going to use that. Anyway, so it is 10¼ inches wide. Okay, so the whole thing is approximately 16¾ inches long. The center of this to this end is 6½. Yep, 6½, and then 10¼ from the back there. Okay, so the main springs then are connected onto this little hook here, which bolts onto the central piece. That is those hooks are 8 inches wide. They've got just a little bevel, just a little dish in them just to hook onto the springs. The center of this connection bolt to here is 3½ inches. Okay, so here you can see the little gear locking mechanism that I was telling you about. There's like a snail shell spring here, again, just takes out some of the shock from the machine as it returns. Well, it seems to. This is very stiff though, I couldn't compress this whatsoever. These just lock the hammer in place as you turn it, and stop it from going anywhere by the looks of it. This whole piece is 10½ inches wide, and you'll notice these rollers here. These contact with the return spring. You can actually see it. You can see that one rolling quite well. That's not so good on the one that I made, but it is what it is. You could use just a piece of pipe. You could even put a bearing in there if you really wanted to. They're just held in place with cotter pins. I need to replace the one that goes on here. Okay guys, the main arm then is 27.5 inches long. Or as I say, you could just use a piece of channel iron, that would do the job there. This does seem to have been fettled somewhat at the back, but you could even use a solid piece as well. So from the center of this pivot point to the back piece of the arm is 9 5/8. This is quite a chunky pivot point, but when I bought it, this has actually been welded together. I've since separated that so that it can move if needs be, but there is a little flange going that way which seems to stop the hammer from going forwards. I don't know if that's just to, again, just as an extra thing as it comes backwards, just so that it's got that bit more movement in it. I suspect so. Finally then, the fixing mechanism. This doesn't really matter, I wouldn't have thought, but just for reference, the U-shaped pieces are, what's that, 5.5, 5.25 inches tall. This plate that goes on the top there is 11.5 inches long. Center to center they are 7 inches. These are just big screws. You could use actual bolts if you want. It's worth noting that there is a hole in this plate to accept the grub screw on either one of these. And yeah. Okay guys, you'll notice that this is bent, and luckily I have an angle finder, so let's have a look. Okay, looks like just under 23 degrees, so not a huge amount of bend, but there is a definite curve to it, so just thought I'd let you know that. Okay guys, lastly, the hammer itself. The arm is 35 inches long. It's a big beefy piece of wood. It's a good 1 3/4 inches wide. There is a flat spot at the back here which sits on the main arm, just so that it doesn't rotate. Obviously, I would suggest doing that definitely if you're going to build one. The head itself then, it weighs 28 pounds. Now I appreciate that is a massive sledgehammer head, and chances are you're not going to be able to find one anywhere near that big, but I imagine that a decent 14-pound sledge would do the job just as well. So yeah, there we go. So, cheers guys. Well, that's just a more in-depth look at the treadle hammer. I hope you guys find the video helpful. I'll do some sketches and try and post those on Facebook or something like that, and just as detailed as I can. That'll probably take me a little while, but I'll get those up as soon as I can. As ever guys, if you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. I should at some point actually be going offshore. I've been supposedly going offshore every day for a week now, and it's just every day it's just been cancelled, so it's been an absolute nightmare. So that's why I've had videos going out of I'm going offshore soon, I might be away for a little while, and then I'm back with another video. So yeah, I am going offshore at some point. I don't know when. It might be tomorrow. Today is Sunday the 2nd. Might be tomorrow, might be some point next week, but there is a pause in the videos coming. I just don't know when it is. So yeah, I'm on call. It's a pain in the arse. That's just the way it is. Anyway, so if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. That'd be freaking awesome. I'll put a link just up here. Go and click that and subscribe. And then I'll put a link to a couple of videos here. You should go and check out the bottle opener forging video. There's details of a 1,000 subscriber giveaway in that video, and I'll put a link to this smashing stuff as well. So yeah, as ever guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy. Bye.